I do things I like to do with people I want to be around. And it's a great way to live your life, but it also results in business. Part of building it into something that you enjoy is doing it long enough to see the benefits that it produces.
Real estate agents, welcome back to the RMG Agent Podcast Master Series. I'm your host, Reed Moore, with my co-host and elite real estate professional, Jake Bartlett. And I'm excited today because we're going to introduce to you another one of our Masters series.
Well, today we have Jay Bruzas, who's actually part of our organization. He's one of our top agents, and he's been with us for quite some time. And as amazing of an agent as Jay is, and how great he handles the transactions with his clients and how much they love him, he's even a better human than that. What did we learn from him?
So my conversation with Jay, who has been now in the industry for 10 years, is absolutely a master of taking care of his network. Jay does almost exclusively business that is repeat and referral business at this point in his career. And what I want people listening to is hearing the confidence, not the pretend confidence, but the confidence that comes with years and years and years of mastery and the heartbeat for service. How much he doesn't just do real estate deals, but how much he serves in the community, serves his people. He has something that he says that I won't ruin in the interview, but he has something that says that really helps you sit back and think, who is it that I actually want to be working with?
Nice. I am super excited to get to listen to this episode. He's somebody within our organization that when he talks, people listen. He might not always talk, but when he does, he carries a lot of weight, and I think you guys are going to see that. And as somebody that's gotten to know him over the last 12 months or so, I'm super blessed and to know him, and very excited that he got the recognition that he deserves within this.
Absolutely. Okay, everybody, we're going to cut to my interview with the Jay Bruzas. You guys are going to enjoy it. So, so where we want to start, right, is I have this, this super selfish ability on this podcast to put people in the seat that I think should be listened to, right? Okay. And that certainly is you for a whole list of different reasons. But what I would start by just saying is why should people listen to you?
Well, my go-to answer to that question usually is I don't know that you should, because I don't know anything about the people who are listening to me. I'm happy to share what I know and share what I've learned, and if I can be a resource to people, I'd love to do that.
So is that why you approach people you work with in business?
It is.
Why do you do that?
I know that I'm good at my job, and I know that I will take great care of people, but I'm not so arrogant as to think that I'm the best fit for everybody.
Okay.
And there are a lot of great people in our industry who are very good at what they do, and while I may be a good fit for a lot of potential clients, there's other real estate agents out there who are very good at what they do. And I'm not afraid to see other good agents succeed, because I believe that there's enough business to go around. Okay. And so, yeah, if I'm sitting in front of somebody and they say, why should I work with you? We can talk about the reasons for that. Mm-hmm. But there's also a few other people that you could talk to and have an excellent experience with.
Did you start there, or have you grown into that?
I think I have always had that attitude to a certain extent, but as my business has grown, so has that abundance mindset. Mm-hmm. And just knowing that there's enough business to go around and wanting to see the best possible outcome for all parties involved. One of the foundational principles at Keller Williams is that win-win or no deal. And that's not just in reference to negotiations in a real estate conference or contract, but that's in reference to business relationships or personal relationships. That concept of win-win or no deal is beautiful, and it's real. It doesn't have to be this airy-fairy thing that it only exists in people's ideals. It's a real thing, and it's a real way you can live your life.
Okay, so it intrigues me, because in our industry, we have talking points, and it's like sometimes you can hear somebody and I'm like, man, you know all the things to say to make everybody think that you think a certain way. Mm-hmm. But it's very different when the very first thing out of your mouth to a client that says something like that is let's shift into neutral and explore it. Mm-hmm. right? That's different.
Yeah.
So when did you start saying that to clients?
I don't know. I think pretty early on. I want to say I heard somebody else say it one time. Because, in real estate, we're always taught all these different scripts and dialogues and stuff. And I heard somebody else say that one time, when we're scripting and someone throws out the objection, why should I work with you? And somebody said, well, I don't know that you should. And I was like, I like that. That resonates with me because so often we're taught to, handle the objection and try and convince people. So it's like, man, I don't really want to convince somebody. Mm-hmm. If I have to convince someone to work with me, it might be a rocky relationship. If I can approach it up front from the perspective of let's see if this is a good idea, if this is a win for both of us, and then we decide together that it is, it's going to be a much better working relationship from day one.
I know a little bit about your business, and I know that you, no kidding, have worked and loved and taken care of your network, the people that are in your in your orbit. They know you. I would say that they know you, love you, and trust you, right? And you've built your business off of that. Walk me through. I'm an agent out there, and I'm struggling right now, and I'm trying to figure this thing out. And Gary and everybody else tells me, like, work your database, work your network, and I just am frozen up. What's step one?
I think step one is if you're really needing to get to work, don't be afraid to do the really hard work, the stuff that's going to result in business tomorrow, right? The cold calling, the door knocking, all the things that everybody's afraid to do. Don't be afraid to do that. You don't have to build a business around that, though. If you're thinking long term, the way that I've come to say it now is that I do things I like to do with people I want to be around. And it's a great way to live your life, but it also results in business.
Yeah.
Like if you are on purpose, spending time in life, doing things you truly enjoy doing, and you're doing those with the people that you love and the people that you want to spend time with, business happens. But in the meantime, you get to have a really good quality of life.
So I'm going back to something you said that just really it piqued my attention, and that is that you're in that place in your career now, and it's not guaranteed that like every single day will be exactly that from here on forward. The market can be harsh, right? But the very first thing you said is the same thing that people who have built empires in this business have said when we're sitting here, and that is the fundamentals, the foundation of being willing to flat out do the hardest things is how all of us cut our teeth. Yeah. Right? And it made me think, you now have this ability to be with the people that you want to be with, doing the things that you want. But there's a part of me that thinks that the only reason that you earned that place in their worlds is because you're willing to do something super hard, and that creates a commonality among successful people.
Yeah, there's some truth to that, and you can do both of those things at the same time.
Right? Okay, yeah, walk me through that.
Yeah, so you can live a life that you want to live and consistently do hard things too. So you can show up and so for me, I have a good community at my church and at my gym, and I have a good group of guy friends that gets together regularly, and there's these different communities that I am really purposeful about building because I love these people and I love the activities that we do together, right? So that's just a constant. That's just how I live my life. Interspersed in there, when I go to work, there's times when I do hard things that I don't really enjoy, but it's necessary because I need to do my job, right? So I don't think you have to do one or the other. I think you can purposely do both all the time.
Yeah, it makes sense. And even just this idea of hard things, you talk about the gym. I know the relationship that you and your wife have with not just with the people at the gym, but with the gym itself. That's not an easy thing. Like what you guys do to go take care of your body is fundamentally choosing to do hard things, right?
Yeah.
How do you build that into a lifestyle that you enjoy?
I think part of building it into something that you enjoy is doing it long enough to see the benefits that it produces. Anytime you're doing something that is hard, if you quit before you see the benefits, then how can you know whether it was worth it or not? But with the gym in this situation we're talking about, something that I love about the gym, I don't love to work out, but what I do love is going to the gym with my wife and watching her struggle against something that's difficult, and then seeing her win and get better. My respect for her and my admiration for her grows. And then the same thing comes from her when she sees me get better at something that I'm physically struggling against, and we see our partner hit a new PR or whatever it is, we become that person's cheerleader.
Yeah.
And then our relationship grows and we're like, that's my person, right? That's somebody I'm proud of. And I'm proud to have her as my wife because I've seen her put the work in and I've seen her do hard things and get cool results from it consistently for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm gonna go to the gym.
Yeah.
Because I love the result. And then eventually, because of the result, then you eventually start to fall in love with the action itself. You're like, I like doing the reps.
Yeah.
I like putting in the hard work for the sake of doing the hard work. What it gives me in the end is a bonus.
Yeah.
It's great to get the result, but I love the hard work.
Yeah. I had this experience last week, and I had a couple of particularly nasty leg days in a row, actually several. And there's just certain things I love, certain things I don't, and the things I don't hurt in weird ways. But I went and I hiked a mountain, and I went mountain goat. I just went straight up the mountain.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, like all of that soreness, all of that stuff, it just produced that.
Yeah.
And now I'm standing up at the top of this mountain over and looking at a valley. I'm thinking, that was awesome.
Yeah. I heard somebody say one time, I was listening to a podcast and I don't remember who it was, but it was somebody in the strength or athletic world. They said the reason you hate leg day is because you don't do it often enough. And like everybody complains about leg day, but his whole thing was like, do it more often and you'll love it. Because you'll get a pump and you'll still be able to walk.
Yes.
And you'll get stronger.
Yeah.
And then next time you'll be able to squat more.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, so now, so you've been doing this now for 10 years, and give me a couple of what are a couple of defining moments in your career?
The first really defining moment I can think of that is kind of burned in my memory. It was about a few months into my career when I had my first closing. So it was like maybe 2 or 2.5 months after I had officially started in real estate, and we had saved up enough money to get us through the first couple of months, right? And that money was basically gone. We were down to double digits in our bank account, and I had my first closing, and it wasn't a big one. It was a $20,000 land deal or something.
Yeah.
But it was my first paycheck, and I remember how big of a deal that was. And then the next closing happened to be the next day, and it was like, okay, if I do the things I was told to do, like if I just put in the work that I was told to put in, it'll have this result. So that was a pretty pivotal moment for me. And then another one I would say was about 3 years in when I got competent. So the first few years were just such a grind because I came from a background that was not business related at all. It was just manual labor, and I worked with my hands, not my head. Yeah. And so coming into real estate, I didn't have any business being in real estate, but I did the hard work. And it was a grind. And I remember one day about 3 years in, I looked up and I was like, this is not hard anymore. Like it was such a grind for so long, but I can handle anything that comes my way now. And I remember that moment being like, this is really cool. Yeah. Like I'm good at something again, because like before that I've been doing various trades or whatever. And it always takes you a little while to get good at it. You put in or however many thousands of hours, and then you get good at what you're doing. Right. And I remember that moment in real estate where I was like, I'm competent. I can do this. Yeah. That was pretty defining.
That's awesome. What about behaviors? What are some of the behaviors in your career that have really helped you, and what are some that maybe have hindered you?
One of the biggest behaviors that's helped me is my tendency to obsess over things. Not like I don't have this big a huge personality when it comes to obsessing, but like if I get into something, I will get into it. Yeah. And that's been a good thing for me. That's been helpful in real estate. Because when I've gotten interested in something or when I've become passionate about something, I just quietly get dug in. And I'm good at just showing up day in and day out and just being consistent, I think. So that's a big one. But that could come back to habits maybe.
Okay, so talk to me about consistency. Consistency has been my arch nemesis all my life. Anything that is in my life that is consistent, there's a lot now, has just come from like just bare knuckle brawls with my inconsistency. And part of it is I just have this feeling now that if anything that I'm consistent in, I'm going to win over time. Like that's the deal. So tell me about consistency and when did you figure that out? And what's the value of that for you in your career?
Specifically in regards to real estate, one of the things that I noticed being really valuable with consistency was just showing up at the office, like treating my profession like a real job, because it's really easy not to.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't. A lot of people will, because you're self-employed, right?
Yep.
So a lot of people will treat it like they don't have a job, and they'll just do it on accident. Where if I consistently show up to the office every day of the week at the same time every day, and I'm willing to do that. Now, obviously, there's some flexibility there. That's one of the cool things about real estate is there's an amount of freedom. But if you respect your job enough to show up every day and do the work, and you do that for long enough, it'll work. Yeah, does that answer that question?
It does. One of the things that's just been resonating over and over and over again over the last couple of days is, and nobody's just like said it until you said it now, and that is show up, right? It's kind of like rule number one. If you figure that one thing out, like if somebody gets up and they just realize, I choose to show up, and I physically show up at whatever time, and I do that consistently, there's something about that just sets a foundation for a lot of other things.
Yeah. And you build a routine around it. But it is really easy to not have to do that in real estate.
Yeah.
And so, I've seen a lot of people who will show up for a few hours in the morning, and then for the rest of their day, they just goof off. And I think it was when I was first starting, we had a core group in the office in the Valley of Blake, Brianne, Hondo, Nathan, and Jay.
Right.
And Blake was really good about setting that standard for everybody. He was like, hey, we're in the office during business hours. And the only reason you're out of the office during business hours is if you're on appointments. If you don't have appointments, you spend the afternoon working on setting appointments.
Yeah.
It was just like, you still have a job. You still show up every day, and you work for 8 or 10 hours or whatever it takes.
Right.
And that's just what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a good way to start off. And I came from a job previously where I was working 10 or 12 hours a day anyway.
Right.
So now I'm just doing that in a different setting.
Yeah. It's funny because I've seen a lot of people that should be able to succeed. But the reality is that all of their career up until real estate, they've had somebody enforce upon them you do this exactly the way I tell you or you're fired. And it's interesting because it creates it has a value, right? But it also removes the personal growth element of having to actually struggle how to figure that out for yourself, which then radiates into all these other areas of your life and really helps you grow.
Yeah, very true. And even at our team where we're more structured than a lot, you're still only really expected to be there in the and then after that it's up to you to decide what you do.
Yeah.
And the people who are going to do well are going to put in the time.
Yeah, here's the structure, here's the opportunity, and then here's the extra. And the extra sometimes isn't extra, it's what you have to do just to make it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about a couple of really, really rough times. Like in 10 years, it hasn't all been, I interviewed Chase Williams, like up and to the right. Yeah. It hasn't all been that way. So what are a couple of times that things were
down and to the left,
down and to the left and on fire?
Ugh. I can remember a few specifically, but one of them was January of 2020, February of 2020, like right around then. Courtney and I had bought a house in late 2019. And we'd spent a bunch of money fixing it and making some changes to it and stuff. And so we didn't have a ton of extra cash, and my pipeline wasn't great. My pipeline of upcoming business wasn't great. And we were about to go on a cruise. Mm-hmm. We were going to take a vacation for a little bit. And I remember having the conversation with her when we were about to leave for this cruise. We're like, hey, financially, we don't have a lot of bandwidth right now. And we're going on this cruise. We're going to enjoy it. We're not going to skimp. Like, we're going to enjoy ourselves while we're on this cruise, and then we'll just deal with the consequences when we get back. So we did. We went on this cruise, we enjoyed it, and then we came back home, and I was like, all right, time to get back to work. And it was funny. I remember for 2019, I was one of the top producing team members in Keller Williams, Alaska, and I remember sitting in that chair when they called my name and walking up to collect that little plastic trophy and feeling like such a fraud.
Oh,
I'm like, he's one of the top producing team members, and I'm like, I'm broke. And I have no pipeline of business. And I felt like an imposter, right? Well, then I was like, okay, I'm going to get to work now. And then like 3 weeks later, the world shut down.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I was like, this is not good. Like that was a low couple of weeks there. And I felt like I had been super irresponsible because I had done well in 2019 and I'd sold lots of real estate and made plenty of money and everything. And I didn't have anything to show for it, really. Like we had the house and stuff, but like I felt like I had really dropped the ball on taking care of my family. And it was because the consistency that I was talking about earlier, I'd gotten lazy with that. And so in, fall of 2019, when we were busy with the house and all of that, I kind of put business on the back burner and I was like, it'll be fine. It'll work itself out.
Yeah.
And I dropped the ball on doing my job. And then we didn't have any money and the world shut down. And I was like, this is not good. Like that was a scary moment.
Oh yeah.
So fortunately, I did put in the work, and then we all know what happened in early 2020 with the real estate market, and like I view that as God's grace in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because if the opposite had happened, which a lot of us thought that the opposite would happen,
I sure did.
right?
Yeah.
And I remember getting a phone call from you actually in early February. You called Courtney and I, and you were like, "Hey, I don't know what's coming down the pike, but it could be rough. You need to have $10,000 in cash in your at home, and you need to make sure that like all this stuff." And Courtney and I looked at each other and just laughed. Nope, we broke. Like, guess it's gonna suck. And so that was kind of a scary moment. And then it did end up working out. And I think that's generally true. Is like, okay, if you're willing to put in the work, it's going to work out.
There's something that you said, and it's just common things with successful people, which you are certainly one by, again, lots of different measurements, in my opinion. And that is that what I heard from you say is the world shut down, but what I heard you really, really say is I made choices that made that harder for me and my family. And there's just this layer of personal responsibility that anybody who's been doing this for a long period of time, they see something that's a hard situation, they're either like, I created that hard situation, or that hard situation was harder because of me.
Yes.
And everything else is like, I would just say irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right. How have you always been just somebody who's like, if it's up to me or?
No, a lot of times my go-to is just to be a victim. Like, learning how to take responsibility for things that aren't my fault is not something that comes naturally to me. And so it doesn't mean that I'm going to take the blame for things that aren't my fault, but if it's to be, it's up to me concept and taking responsibility for a situation, even if it's not my fault, is a work in progress. And it's something that I'm learning and I'm constantly working on.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that things that are outside of your control happen all the time. Most things that happen are outside of my control. And if my focus is on those things, my life's going to be absolute chaos, and so will the lives of my family and my friends, and that's irresponsible.
Yeah.
So if I can be focused on what I do have control over, and take responsibility for the change I can make, then the rest of it kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've had conversations around empathy, right, and just how. There's this level of empathy that comes when you've gone through really hard things that can allow you to say things to people because you've experienced it, right? Like there's a gravity around the weight. You're not being flip. You're not just like, don't be a weenie, just like figure it out, because you to some extent feel the pain, right? Yeah. So if you were to take the gloves off and you're talking to an agent right now who's struggling, any level of production, and you just, from a place of been there, done that, you had some just hard things to say to them that were loving for their future, what would you say to them?
Don't complain about the results you're not getting from the work you're not doing.
Okay.
That's a big one.
Tell me more.
We can track every metric, right? And as much as I don't like it because I'm a very relational person, to a certain extent, real estate sales is numbers based, right? The cool thing about that is that if you track all of those numbers, you can see where your weak points are. And we know that if you want to close X number of units every year, then you have to pen so many of them, right? So you have to pen so many, And in order to pen that many, you have to show so many homes or go on so many appointments or whatever.
Yeah.
And in order to go on that many appointments, you have to set so many appointments. And in order to set so many appointments, you have to talk to so many people. And somewhere in that chain for everybody is a weak spot or multiple weak spots. Yeah. Some people are really, really good at some parts of it. Yeah. Some people are really good at every part except for one. And a lot of times they're not willing to look at that one thing that they're bad at. They'll just make up for it in other areas.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to track your numbers and be real with yourself about where you're needing to improve, then you don't get to complain about the results you're not getting from the work you're not doing anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Because there is it is easy if you're not tracking. It's easy to hide. Mm-hmm. It's easy to hide things as simple as, I remember, you've heard this story before. I used to have a chess clock way back in the day. Yeah. And I would check, I had productive time and unproductive time, and I only tracked my lead generation time in the morning, right? So if I was on the phone or dialing, it was productive time. And if it wasn't, it was non-productive time. And, and I had been doing 3 hours of lead generation every day for, a little while, right? Like longer than maybe any other time in my career at that point. And so I decided to get this, and I just remember it was the first day I did like, okay. Second day, I remember I had 3 minutes of productive time in 3 hours. And until I tracked it, I would have told you, oh, it wasn't the best day. I had probably an hour and a half. Yeah. And it was 3 minutes. And I look at that and it's like, okay, so out of the most important time of my day, I put 3 minutes worth of work in. What have you ever done in your life that's produced a good result for you, right?
Yeah.
What else would you say to an agent? Like, gloves off, I love you, but I have some hard things to say.
Nobody else can want it for you. Like you can, and if you talk to all the people and get all the advice, it doesn't do any good unless you put it into practice. Like I think it was a Bold class or something like that where they said education without implementation is just entertainment.
Yeah.
So it's cool to go to all the classes and learn all the things, but if you're not putting the work in, then you're just having fun.
Right.
You're wasting your time and everyone else's.
Yeah. I love it. So there's agents out there right now that they're getting their head reoriented to the market, and maybe they were going to give up, but now they're not going to give up, right? What encouragement would you give them?
At its core, I believe that what we do in real estate sales or whatever part of real estate you're in is about taking care of people. And there are a lot of people in the world. And there's lots of people who need to be taken care of. And it is super, super easy to go out and find people who need to be taken care of. People freak out all the time about how, there's way less sales than there were last year. Yeah, but there's still people buying and selling homes.
Right.
Go find people who need help. There's lots of them.
Sure.
People are everywhere. I remember one time I bought a cell phone at AT&T, and the guy who helped me buy the cell phone ended up buying a house with me a few years later, or a few months later. There's people everywhere.
Yeah.
Go out and be around people.
I love it.
It's good for you and it's easy to do.
Yeah. I love it, man. And you've proven it, right? Like 10 years of doing this and serving people at a high level. It's been awesome to see you grow and to see your career, man. I appreciate it. So this podcast, right, it's about impacting, empowering, and encouraging agents, and you've done all of those things. And I just really appreciate your time, Jay. Thanks for sharing with everybody. And dude, thanks for all you do.
Yeah, my pleasure.